The world watched with growing fear. News came on June 4, 2025. Ukraine had launched a drone strike. This was not just any strike. The drones hit Russian military air bases. These bases were important. They housed Russian aircraft. These aircraft were special. They were capable of carrying nuclear weapons. This action immediately raised alarms. The risk of nuclear war seemed higher than ever. This was a bold move by Ukraine in the ongoing conflict. The air bases targeted were significant. They were home to strategic bombers. These included the Tu-95 and Tu-22M heavy bombers. These planes are a key part of Russia's nuclear power. They form part of what is known as Russia's nuclear triad. This triad includes land-based missiles, submarine-launched missiles, and strategic aircraft. Attacking any part of this triad is seen as a very serious step. It touches the core of Russia's national security. The world held its breath, wondering what would come next. Ukraine stated its reasons for the attack. They claimed the strike was successful. According to Ukrainian officials, more than 40 Russian planes were damaged. The targeted Tu-95 and Tu-22M bombers were not just for show. Russia had been using these planes. They launched cruise missiles from them. These missiles had hit Ukrainian cities many times. For Ukraine, this was a way to fight back. It was a way to reduce Russia's ability to attack its people and its land. The international community quickly understood the gravity. This was not a minor incident. It was an attack on Russia's strategic nuclear capabilities. Keith Kellogg, an envoy for former US President Trump, noted this. He said the attack targeted a part of Russia's nuclear triad. This fact alone made the situation extremely dangerous. The fear was that Russia might see this as an existential threat. Such a perception could lead to a devastating response from Moscow. The world waited for Russia's next move. The reaction from Moscow was swift and severe. Russian President Vladimir Putin did not stay silent. He issued a strong warning. He stated clearly that Russia would respond to Kiev's attacks. The attacks on the airfields housing nuclear-capable planes were unacceptable to him. Putin's words carried immense weight. They signaled a potential new phase in the conflict. This phase could be far more dangerous than what had been seen before. His government viewed this as a direct assault on its core military power. Across the Atlantic, former US President Donald Trump also became involved. He had a phone call with Vladimir Putin. This call happened on Wednesday, June 4, 2025. After the call, Trump shared some details. He said Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond. Trump's statement confirmed the seriousness of Putin's intent. It also highlighted the complex diplomatic situation. Trump's relationship with Putin has long been a subject of discussion. His involvement added another layer to the crisis. Kremlin advisors and those close to Trump amplified the alarm. They emphasized the growing risk of a nuclear confrontation. Kirill Dmitriev is the head of Russia's sovereign wealth fund. He has acted as an intermediary between the Kremlin and Trump's envoy. Dmitriev described the Ukrainian drone strike in stark terms. He called it an attack on Russian nuclear assets. He warned that the risks of a Third World War were rising quickly. Such statements seemed designed to create pressure. This pressure had specific aims. Some advisors reportedly wanted Trump to reduce US support for Ukraine further. They also hoped to keep Trump interested in brokering a peace deal. By highlighting the nuclear danger, they might achieve these goals. The idea was that fear of a wider war could change US policy. It could force Ukraine into negotiations on terms more favorable to Russia. The situation was becoming a high-stakes game of international pressure and influence. It was a dangerous game for everyone involved. In the United States, opinions on the Ukrainian strike were sharply divided. Keith Kellogg, who serves as Trump's envoy for Ukraine and Russia, voiced his concerns. He told Fox News, "The risk levels are going way up." He pointed out that the attack targeted Russia's nuclear triad. This made it particularly dangerous. Kellogg also mentioned unconfirmed rumors. These rumors suggested Ukraine might have struck the Russian nuclear fleet at Severomorsk. Such an act would further escalate tensions significantly. The uncertainty added to the growing anxiety. Prominent figures associated with the Make America Great Again, MAGA, movement condemned the drone attack. Steve Bannon, a former Trump advisor, made a strong comparison. He likened the Ukrainian strike to Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. This comparison suggested a surprise attack that could lead to a much larger war. Charlie Kirk, another influential conservative commentator, also expressed alarm. He wrote on social media, "Most people aren't paying attention, but we're closer to nuclear war than we've been since this began in 2022. These voices amplified the sense of crisis. Dan Caldwell offered another perspective. He is an influential foreign policy advisor. He previously worked at the Pentagon until May 2025. Caldwell stated that the drone strike has the potential to be highly escalatory. He argued for a change in US policy. He said the US should not only distance itself from this attack, but end any support that could directly or indirectly enable attacks against Russian strategic nuclear forces. His view represented a call for caution and de-escalation from the US side. It was a direct challenge to current support levels. However, Ukrainian officials presented a different view. They maintained that Russia often exaggerates its nuclear threats. They believe Russia uses the fear of nuclear war as a tool. The goal, according to Kiev, is to blackmail the United States. By threatening nuclear escalation, Russia hopes the US will withhold greater support for Ukraine. This would limit Ukraine's ability to defend itself and reclaim its territory. This perspective suggests that Russia's warnings might be more about psychological warfare than actual intent to use nuclear weapons. The truth was hard to discern. Understanding the current crisis requires looking at Ukraine's history. Ukraine once had a large nuclear arsenal. It was the third largest in the world after the Soviet Union collapsed. However, Ukraine made a historic decision. In 1994, it voluntarily gave up all its nuclear weapons. This was a major step towards global denuclearization. It was seen as a responsible act by a newly independent nation. Ukraine chose a non-nuclear path, trusting international agreements for its safety. In return for giving up its nuclear weapons, Ukraine received security assurances. These assurances came from major powers. The United States, the United Kingdom, and Russia all signed the agreement. This was known as the Budapest Memorandum. These countries promised to respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. They also pledged to refrain from the threat or use of force against Ukraine. Russia's invasion in 2014 and the full-scale war in 2022 broke these promises. This history is vital to understanding Ukraine's current position. This is not the first time Russia has used nuclear rhetoric. There are precedents for such concerns. In September 2022, Russian forces faced major setbacks. They were pushed back near Kharkiv and Kherson. At that time, Russian officials signaled something alarming. They suggested the Kremlin was considering using a battlefield nuclear weapon. Some senior Biden administration officials believed there was a significant chance, perhaps 50%, that Russia would use such a weapon. This was especially feared if its lines collapsed or if Ukraine attacked Crimea. The recent Ukrainian drone strike has brought these fears back to the forefront. The potential global implications are immense. The risk of a direct nuclear confrontation, however small, is terrifying. These rising tensions could significantly affect future US-Ukraine relations. The US might face pressure to limit its support, or it might feel compelled to provide even stronger backing. The broader geopolitical landscape is also becoming more unstable. The world is watching to see if diplomacy can defuse this dangerous situation. The future remains deeply uncertain.